Part 38. At the beginning, I gave the future empress her death. I became stronger because I was stupid. Author, Len Mian Bulletin Leng. Chapter 371. Xuanhuan's face suddenly turned cold. Although she knew that Qin Mu was violent and perverse, not only did he like married women, but he also coveted beautiful women, but she never expected that he would say such shameless words to her. He actually dared to set his sights on her? A trace of cold murderous intent flashed across Xuanhuan's clear eyes, and her inner anger instantly rose. She gritted her teeth secretly, trying to suppress the urge to rush forward and strangle this bastard to death. This human is really unreasonable. Xuanhuan remembered Xiao Zhao's reminder to her. At that time, she didn't take it seriously, because she believed that Qin Mu could reach this position today and had such a reputation in Chang'an City. He must not be as rumored to catch a fairy as soon as he saw one. Even if it was like this before, it was only because those so-called fairies were too weak or their backgrounds were not strong enough, so they suffered the murderous hands of this lustful and tyrant. When facing herself, the lord of the great Qin should be restrained and weigh the pros and cons. After all, no matter her own strength or the background behind her, she is not comparable to those fairies. Even if the quasi-emperor comes, he has to think twice before he can move her. You must know that in the White Tiger clan, there is a truly invincible existence. But Xuanhuan never expected that the man in front of her had no fear at all, and still went his own way, and really had his own ideas. Isn't he afraid of the revenge of the White Tiger clan? However, despite her anger, Xuanhuan still had some powerless complaints in her heart. Is there only the most primitive instinct of the creature in the other party's mind? Doesn't he want something else besides this? Xuanhuan really wants to use her sharp claws to gently cut open Qin Mu's head and see if there is anything else in it besides lust. However, the one who is the most broken at this time is Fairy Yueshan. Fairy Yueshan widened her eyes and looked at Qin Mu in disbelief. Her lips trembled slightly, wanting to say something, but she didn't know what to say. Her heart seemed to be torn into countless pieces at this moment, and each piece was trembling in pain. She had clearly closed her eyes and accepted her miserable fate. Yes, she was ready to be tortured by Qin Mu, and even ready to die. However, she never thought that Qin Mu would treat her with such disgust. Disgust? How could she be disgusted? She was Fairy Yueshan, the fairy of Fenglay Pavilion, and the goddess in the hearts of countless people. What made her even more unacceptable was that Qin Mu actually called her trash. Fairy Yueshan no longer cared about her situation at this time. Qin Mu's words echoed in her mind. Is this considered sincerity? Do you think I am a garbage collector? These words were like a sharp sword, piercing her heart mercilessly. In Qin Mu's eyes, was she so unbearable? Fairy Yueshan felt that she had suffered great harm, not only physically, but also the psychological gap was the most fatal. After all, she was one of the famous fairies in the Tiankai domain. Every time she went out, she was surrounded by people. In addition to the praises, there were countless admiring eyes mixed with a bit of awe. But today, not only did she become a prisoner, but she was also despised as garbage. It was really insulting. Fairy Yueshan held back her tears, opened her eyes in exasperation, and stared at Qin Mu fiercely, as if she wanted to read what he meant from his expression and eyes. She would rather endure Qin Mu's unreasonable humiliation of her than suffer such grievances. Unfortunately, she was a prisoner, and it was obviously destined that she had no sense of existence, and could only look at Qin Mu with a pair of fierce eyes. Not to mention Feng Lingyun on the other side, he was now an object with signs of life, and no one would care what he thought. At this moment, he was both thankful and sad. He was thankful that his fiancée, Fairy Yueshan, had not been killed, but he was sad that the supreme treasure he wanted to hold in his hands was like garbage in Qin Mu's eyes and could be discarded at any time. Is the gap between people so big? Fen Lingyuan felt that he could suddenly understand the mentality of those low-level cultivators when they looked at him. Maybe it was similar to what he was like now. Your Majesty, I think you must be kidding me. My sincerity is just an appetizer. If your Majesty cooperates with me, there will be greater sincerity later, such as some secrets of this world, and even the way to become an immortal can be fully told to your Majesty. For example, I can also help Dakin expand outward and consolidate your rule. My White Tiger clan has this strength. I believe your Majesty should not lose the big picture for the small. Xuanhuan's eyes flickered and her tone was cold. At this time, her voice was nothing but alienation and indifference. However, she had not completely torn her face off, but just expressed her attitude in a cold tone, and then extended a real olive branch. She did not believe that Qin was not interested in the secrets of this world and the road to becoming an immortal, unless he was a fool. However, Qin just smiled slightly, looked up and down, raised the corners of his mouth slightly, and said jokingly, "What a pity that I am only interested in you." Xuanhuan's eyes were slightly cold, and her brows were furrowed. Well, she still underestimated the lust of this shameless and tyrant. There are people in this world who are not interested in the road to becoming an immortal, but are more interested in beauty. Xuanhuan's chest rose and fell slightly, and she kept taking deep breaths to adjust her mentality, lest she lose control of her temper and take action. But at this moment, an idea suddenly flashed in Xuanhuan's mind. Etc. The reason why Qin is not interested in becoming an immortal may be because he doesn't need it at all. Or maybe Qin knows more. After all, Qin is a man with great opportunities. As soon as this idea came up, it was quickly considered by Xuanhuan as the most likely reason. And it can be explained that Qin has the current level of cultivation. And that palace. Xuanhuan remembers clearly the palace called Lingxiao Palace. If the pressure deep inside the palace hadn't made her worry, she would have gone into the palace to find out. Xuanhuan looked at Qin with bright eyes. If it was really what she guessed, then she was indeed right on this trip. However, Xuanhuan did not appear too excited. She quickly subdued the strange look in her eyes and said calmly, "In this case, our cooperation can only break down. No, we can still have a good chat." The curve of Qin lips deepened, and he stared at her closely. Xuanhuan raised her eyebrows, snorted coldly, and said nothing. She wanted to hear what this lustful and foolish man had to say. At the beginning, I gave the future empress her death. I became stronger because I was stupid. Author, Len Mian Buletin Leng. Chapter 372. First of all, I don't know what your White Tiger clan wants from me. Secondly, you said that your sincerity is not limited to Fairy Yuetian in your hand, but until now, I haven't even received the small sincerity in your hand. How can I believe that you have greater sincerity? Qin spoke slowly and casually, looking at Fairy Yuetian lightly. The meaning of his words was self-evident. Just say sincerity, but the result is all in your hands. Why don't you give it to me? Xuanhuan was slightly startled when she heard this, and felt inexplicably relieved. This way, things would be much simpler. This Qin was really horny. She had been worried that this guy would not act according to common sense and would not be able to handle it, but in the end, he revealed his horny nature in advance. Why doesn't he collect garbage? Pooh. Hypocritical man. Xuanhuan secretly despised it. Your Majesty, don't worry. I will definitely have the sincerity to satisfy your Majesty. Xuanhuan smiled. She was pretty and charming, her voice was soft and full of charm, as if a spring breeze was blowing by, making people's hearts itch. Then let me give this little sincerity to His Majesty first. I hope your Majesty likes it. After the words fell, Xuanhuan gently lifted Fairy Yuetian in her hand, and gently sent it to Qin as if sending a gift. As for Fen Lingyun, the treatment was not so good. Xuanhuan threw it away as if throwing away garbage, with a touch of disgust on his face. Ah! Fen Lingyun screamed in fear and quickly reached out to catch Fairy Yueshan, but there was an invisible cage between them. Chanur! I will definitely rescue you, Fen Lingyun looked at Fairy Yueshan and shouted loudly. However, what he didn't expect was that Fairy Yueshan, who had always been obedient to him and even admired him, didn't even look at him at this time and was completely indifferent. Fen Lingyun's heart trembled, and he suddenly realized something, and shouted unwillingly, Chanur! Don't forget what you promised me. Have you forgotten it? Fairy Yueshan still didn't look back, she just clenched her fists with her arms, and her nails almost dug into the tender flesh of her palms. As the saying goes, there is nothing greater than grief. When Fen Lingyun yelled and scolded her, Fairy Yueshan knew that her fiancé, who had made an engagement, could no longer rely on her. Especially when Fen Lingyun was so frightened that her words were incoherent and she no longer looked as cheerful as before, the image of the other party in her heart had been shattered. Looking at Fairy Yueshan, who still ignored him and remained indifferent, the blood on Fen Lingyun's face instantly faded. Chanur, you actually betrayed me, Fen Lingyun murmured with a look of pain on his face. He was still about to say something, but Xuanhuan flicked his finger, and a stream of light instantly hit his neck. Ah! Fen Lingyun groaned in pain, his body curled up involuntarily, his cheeks instantly turned red, and veins on his forehead popped. You talk a little too much, Xuanhuan said lightly. Qin Mu watched Fairy Yueshan fly closer with calm eyes, then put his arms around her slender waist and hugged her into his arms. He looked at it carefully, then shook his head and said reluctantly, it's really average. Fairy Yueshan. Even Xuanhuan couldn't help but twitch the corner of her mouth slightly, feeling the urge to beat Qin Mu violently. Fairy Yueshan was obviously a beautiful woman with good looks and figure, but she was devalued as worthless by Qin Mu. Really irritating. Xuanhuan glanced at Qin Mu coldly and turned her attention to Fairy Yueshan. Fairy Yueshan was wearing a long white dress. Her figure was tall and slender, and her uneven curves looked even more charming in the moonlight. Her skin is as delicate and white as mutton fat and white jade, exuding a sickly beauty. There is a hint of sadness between the brows, as if there are hidden thoughts, the corners of the eyes are slightly red, and the pear blossoms with rain make people can't help but feel pity. It's obvious that I feel sorry for him. Xuanhuan stared quietly at Fairy Yueshan in front of her, her beautiful and pale face revealing an unspeakable sadness. Xuanhuan suddenly felt an inexplicable unbearable feeling in her heart. She seemed to be able to feel the pain and helplessness in Fairy Yueshan's heart. She suddenly regretted that she should not have let Fairy Yueshan fall into Qin Mu's clutches. However, at this moment, a strong sense of crisis arose in Xuanhuan's heart. This sense of crisis was like a stormy sea, drowning her in an instant. Her eyes quickly locked on Qin Mu, and she saw him curling his lips into a smile. This smile was like a devil's grin, making people shudder. The 5 fingers of his right hand grasped in vain, as if they were strangling something invisible in the air. Boom! There was a loud noise, and a giant hand suddenly appeared in the air. This hand was like a furious beast, carrying violent power and attacking Xuanhuan. Her eyes were instantly shrouded in shadow, as if the whole world had been smashed into pieces by this hand. Xuanhuan's mind went blank. She couldn't think or act. She could only watch the giant hand approaching her. Her heartbeat became faster and faster, as if it was going to stop suddenly at this moment, and it seemed that her entire body was being strangled by this hand. At this moment, Xuanhuan felt like a weak little kitten being targeted by a powerful and cold hunter, and her delicate body couldn't help but tremble. As a divine beast and a white tiger, she has always been in a superior position among the creatures in the world. Only other creatures are afraid of her bloodline, and she has never experienced the feeling of being a prey. Xuanhuan's pupils shrank sharply. She didn't expect Qin Mu to really attack her. And the attack came too quickly and too abruptly. She didn't even have time to escape. Who would have thought that they were still chatting and discussing cooperation in the last second, and the other party suddenly attacked her in the next second? There is no martial ethics at all. Humans are indeed shameless creatures. Especially the lustful and tyrant in front of him, who is a shameless scum, the king of scum. Xuanhuan thought of what Qin Mu said and did just now, and her heart was choked with anger. Even at this dangerous moment, the thought that flashed through Xuanhuan's mind subconsciously was not to escape, but to be angry. Miss! Get out of the way, Xiao Zhao shouted anxiously. However, the next moment. Bang, a violent collision sounded all around. Miss, Xiao Zhao screamed in horror. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. At the beginning, I gave the future empress her death. I became stronger because I was stupid. Author, Len Mian Buletin Leng. Chapter 373. Boom. The giant hand instantly smashed the entire void, and then slammed hard on the ground next to Xuanhuan. A destructive force raged wildly, sweeping around, the space was annihilated, the earth collapsed, and dark space cracks crossed the void, blocking everyone's sight. Xuanhuan only felt a terrifying force pressing heavily on every inch of her skin, a piercing pain came from her chest, and there was a roar in her ears, and she couldn't hear any sound at all. Not only that, she even had difficulty breathing, and her bones crackled all over her body, as if they could break at any time under this giant palm. So strong, Xuanhuan had only this thought in her mind at this time. Her white tiger holy body can be said to be invincible in defense, but at this moment, she had no power to resist under the attack of this giant palm. If she hadn't experienced it herself, she would never believe it was true. Although she knew that Qin Mu was very strong, she had never thought that he had such a terrifying strength. A huge shock wave hit the ground, a dazzling fire illuminated half of the sky, countless smoke and dust filled the air, swallowing everything. Xuanhuan had no choice but to take this move. White tiger shines. As Xuanhuan cried. Awoo! A soul-shaking roar came from her body, white light flashed, and a huge and ferocious white tiger phantom emerged out of thin air. It was hundreds of meters tall, majestic and domineering, like a god descending, looking down on the world. Roar! The white tiger phantom howled to the sky, the sound moved the sky, a pair of scarlet eyes transmitted a terrifying blood light, which made people tremble with fear, exuding endless pressure, as if the king who ruled the world was invincible. The white tiger jumped up and cut through the sky like a meteor. Swoosh! The dazzling white light with overwhelming force slammed into the center of the giant palm. In an instant, the collision area between the two produced extremely violent conflicts and annihilation phenomena, which was extremely terrifying. Huh! Xuanhuan breathed a sigh of relief, and her delicate snow-white face was a little pale. The scene just now was too dangerous, and she almost fell here. You must know that the situation just now was a matter of life and death. If she hesitated for a moment or reacted a little slower, she might have been injured now. Xuanhuan looked up and saw that the white tiger phantom in front was still in a stalemate with the giant palm. She must leave here immediately. The confrontation just now consumed a lot of her strength, and this was Qin Mu's main battlefield. If it lasted too long, she would definitely suffer in the end. However, just as this idea came up, it was only a moment, and the white tiger phantom suddenly flickered, like a candle swaying in the wind, with a sign of dissipating. Xuanhuan's eyes changed slightly, her face suddenly turned pale, she staggered forward a few steps before she stabilized her body, a trace of bright red blood seeped from the corner of her mouth. Her eyes were full of shock and fear, as if she had seen something incredible. Her white tiger phantom seemed to be unable to withstand the huge pressure and began to show signs of fragmentation. How could it be? It was clearly blocked, but why did it fail so thoroughly? A doubt flashed through Xuanhuan's mind. But reality did not allow her to think about this problem carefully. At this time, the giant hand was still slowly moving forward, not fast, but enough to make people desperate and suffocated. Just as Xuanhuan was about to call back the white tiger phantom, the giant hand that covered the sky and the sun suddenly expanded again at an astonishing speed, as if it was going to cover the entire sky. Against the backdrop of this giant hand, the hundreds of meters high white tiger phantom seemed so small, like a white kitten, without any threat at all. A trace of despair flashed in the eyes of the white tiger phantom, and it seemed to realize that it could not escape the control of this giant hand. It struggled hard, but everything was in vain. The giant hand was like an insurmountable mountain. No matter how hard it tried, it could not escape the fate of being caught. Finally, the giant hand effortlessly lifted up the white tiger phantom, just like pinching a kitten with no attack power. At this moment, the whole world seemed to freeze. Xuanhuan looked at the giant hand in shock and couldn't believe her eyes. The power of this giant hand surpassed everything. It seemed to be the master of this world, and no one could challenge its authority. Roar! A series of shrill wailing sounds came from the mouth of the white tiger phantom. It struggled desperately and roared hard, but it was still useless and was tightly grasped. Xuanhuan's eyes turned cold, and her hands quickly pinched the seal. The next second, a loud earth-shaking sound suddenly exploded. Xuanhuan was shrouded in a layer of light golden light, and she was completely transformed into a mighty divine beast, a white tiger, with a domineering aura that looked down upon the world. At the same time, an ancient and mysterious rune appeared on Xuanhuan's back, and the rune emitted a little starlight, dazzling, gorgeous and beautiful. When the rune was fully bloomed, Xuanhuan turned into a white tiger and pounced, biting at the huge palm with its teeth and claws. A thunderous explosion suddenly sounded, and the whole world trembled. Boom! The white tiger collided with the giant palm, and the explosive shock wave spread out, setting off a storm. A wave of air visible to the naked eye centered on the position where the two giant palms were fighting and quickly radiated to the surroundings, destroying everything it passed, and the earth was torn out one after another bottomless ravine, space was annihilated, and everything was annihilated. The violent collision caused the space to collapse and turn into a black hole, wrapping Xuanhuan and Qin Mu inside. What kind of collision is this? There are no words to describe the feeling of summer evening makeup. She only felt a pair of extremely heavy hands grabbing her arms, almost breaking her arms alive. Immediately afterwards, overwhelming and unbearable pressure hit her, causing her to groan, and a trace of blood spilled from the corner of her mouth. She raised her eyes and looked at Qin Mu. He had a strange and evil smile on his face, and his pair of dark and deep pupils were like an abyss, making it difficult for her to see through. You lose. The low and hoarse voice fell slowly, revealing an indescribable coldness and cruelty. Bang! Xuanhuan felt as if something exploded in her head, her vision went dark, and she fell backwards out of control. Puff! Xuanhuan spat out a mouthful of blood and felt as if her internal organs had been displaced. She couldn't see or distinguish clearly at all, only the sound of thunder echoed in her ears. She only remembered one thought: run. At the beginning, I gave the future empress her death. I became stronger because I was stupid. Author, Len Mian Buletin Leng. Chapter 374. This was definitely the scariest and most dangerous thing she had ever encountered. But now that it's here, how can that big hand allow her to escape so smoothly? The big hand slowly gathered together and held the phantom white tiger and Xuanhuan in their palms. Xuanhuan felt her mind buzzing, she was dizzy, her consciousness was blurred, and her body was even weaker, with no strength at all. Crack. There was a crisp sound, as if something shattered, and the white tiger's shadow was completely annihilated, turning into a white light floating in the sky. Xuanhuan spurted out a mouthful of blood again, and the white tiger she transformed staggered and flew out, and finally fell heavily to the ground. After the brilliant white light in the sky dissipated, a graceful and exquisite woman in white clothes fell to the ground, her fair skin dyed red with blood, which was shocking. Xiao Zhao stood there in a daze, his heart suddenly lifted, and tears burst out of his eyes. How could she inflict such severe trauma on her own young lady? She wanted to kill herself. Xiao Zhao hurriedly ran over to support Xuanhuan, tears streaming down her face. "Miss. How are you?" Xuanhuan's face was pale and bloodless. The blood stained the white clothes on her chest red. Her face was as pale as paper, and her whole body was trembling slightly uncontrollably. Just now, Qin Mu's blow caused her to suffer huge injuries, and even almost injured her soul. If she hadn't been strong enough, she might have been unconscious by now. The phantom of the white tiger was connected to her mind. The phantom of the white tiger was shattered, causing her mind to suffer severe damage. The pain caused washed over her body again and again. This feeling was almost excruciating. Huck it, huck it. Xuanhuan panted violently, her chest heaving violently, and she gasped for air. Damn, how can this guy be so strong? Xuanhuan secretly gritted her teeth. Suddenly, an extremely cold voice sounded, "Woman, you are too weak and you are not qualified to be my opponent." She looked up with difficulty, and saw Qin Mu holding Fairy Yuetian in his arms, standing in the void, looking down at her indifferently, his face cold, and there was a faint golden light around him, like a fairy. Fairy Yuetian stared blankly at what was happening in front of her, with a look of astonishment on her face. He put one hand behind his back, and raised the other hand above his head, with the palm facing down. It was this hand that crushed her white tiger's shadow just now. She stared at the palm blankly, her eyes filled with an inexplicable look. This man could easily crush the white tiger she was proud of. He was the first person she had ever seen to possess such strength at such a young age. Xuanhuan thought secretly. Qin Mu held Fairy Yuetian in his arms, his eyes as deep as an abyss, like an ancient well, and said with a smile, "I thought you had a few brushes, but I didn't expect you to be so weak." Summer evening makeup. This is the first person she has ever seen to have such an irritating ability. Qin Mu. I kindly helped Chang'an City to rescue the siege, and I prepared so much sincerity for cooperation. Is this how you treat me? Xuanhuan gritted her teeth and said, her heart filled with strong anger. She doesn't understand now. She and Qin Mu had no grievances, and even had no intersection at all in the past. Even if cooperation failed, even if he was not afraid of the White Tiger clan, he wouldn't have taken action against her like this, right? Could it be that he wished that everyone in the world was his enemy? This Qin Mu. It's so uncertain. Whether in the White Tiger clan or in the outside world, she had never seen a man as moody as Qin Mu. What on earth was he thinking? Xuanhuan doesn't understand, I really don't understand. Hearing this, Qin Mu raised his brows slightly, and his dark eyes shot out with a sharp edge. Are you questioning me? He slowly raised his lips, with a sneer at the corner of his mouth, and said word for word, Xuanhuan, I advise you to clarify one thing. This is the Qin dynasty, and I can do whatever I want. When Xuanhuan heard this, the corner of her mouth twitched slightly, and she cursed in her heart. Haha, he is really an overbearing tyrant. But she really admitted defeat today. Who said her skills were inferior to others? Okay, now that we're talking about this, let's cancel the cooperation between us, Xuanhuan said indifferently, do whatever you like. I don't want to serve you anymore. Xiao Zhao, let's go. After saying that, Xuanhuan turned around to leave. The opponent's strength is too strong. It is not suitable to stay here for a long time. The best way is to leave here first. As for the injuries sustained here, you can come back later to regain your place. Xuanhuan secretly clenched her fists and vowed to return to where she was today when she went back. On that day, she must step on Qin Mu's head with her feet, then take off her shoes and socks, and let Qin Mu kiss her toes. Not only that, she also had to make Qin Mu stick out his tongue and suck her toes. Just as she was thinking this, Xuanhuan couldn't help but smile. Just wait. You fool. However, the next moment, Qin Mu's figure suddenly appeared on her way away. Xuanhuan's eyebrows stood up and she said angrily, "Qin Mu, what do you want to do again? This guy inexplicably injured himself, and now he stopped her. What did he want?" Qin Mu smiled slightly, "Did I let you go?" Xuanhuan's heart skipped a beat, and she vaguely felt a dangerous breath coming towards her. She stared at Qin Mu vigilantly and said in a deep voice, "Qin Mu, there is no friendship between us. Since the cooperation cannot be achieved, why are you still pestering me like this? What do you want to do?" "I want you." Qin Mu raised his thin lips slightly, and said in a light tone, "Be my concubine." Xuanhuan was stunned and resisted the urge to swear. She refused bluntly, "Impossible, I advise you to give up this idea." "Then I can only take you into the palace and make you my concubine," Qin Mu said calmly, with a gentle and elegant smile on his handsome and enchanting face, as if he was just saying that the weather was really good today. "Qin Mu," Xuanhuan shouted angrily, her pretty face covered with frost. Qin Mu's words were clearly intended to humiliate her. This bastard dared to humiliate himself in this way. Xuanhuan's eyes were blazing with fire, and she stared at Qin Mu, as if she was going to fight him to the death. Qin Mu looked at her with a smile on his face, not afraid of her angry gaze at all. The two of them just looked at each other, and for a moment, no one looked away. The air around them seemed to freeze. After a while, Qin Mu finally sighed, "Xuanhuan, I am not discussing this with you. At the beginning, I gave the future empress her death. I became stronger because I was stupid." Author, Len Mi and Bulletin Leng. Chapter 375. You. Xuanhuan smiled angrily, glaring at him fiercely with a pair of phoenix eyes, wishing to cut him into pieces. "Do you know my identity?" Xuanhuan said sharply. Qin Mu glanced at her and said calmly, "I know, you are the little white tiger. How dare you arrest me after knowing this? Do you know who my parents are? Do you know who my grandfather is?" Qin Mu shook his head and said honestly, "I don't know." Xuanhuan was so angry that her chest heaved violently, and she gritted her teeth and said, "Aren't you afraid that the White Tiger clan will invade Daqin and slaughter your entire imperial city? Do you think the quasi-emperor is very powerful? Let me tell you, my grandfather is much more powerful than the quasi-emperor." When Qin Mu heard this, a hint of sarcasm appeared on his lips. "I haven't taken it seriously yet. You, the White Tiger clan, have a quasi-emperor, and I won't take it either. You can try. If your White Tiger clan dares to invade, I don't mind destroying your entire White Tiger clan." Xuanhuan sneered when she heard this, "Ha!" Even though she had reached this point, the other party was still refusing to accept her words. It seemed that she could not leave here through conventional means. After thinking about it, Xuanhuan took a deep breath, calmed down for a moment, then raised her eyes to look at Qin Mu, and said coldly, "You will regret it." The words fell. With a thought in her mind, the spiritual power in her body was instantly mobilized. Then, an altar appeared in front of her. Xuanhuan took Xiao Zhao directly into the altar without saying a word. As Xuanhuan stepped into the altar, in an instant, the entire altar lit up, shining with dazzling light. Buzz. As the light flickered, Xuanhuan's figure disappeared and she was completely teleported away from here. Qin Mu just watched Xuanhuan disappear and did not stop him. He just shook his head and said helplessly, "You said this is my territory, why are you disobedient?" The next moment, Qin Mu smiled and disappeared with Fairy Yuetian, leaving only Feng Lingyun kneeling on the ground alone, looking at the Qin soldiers surrounding him in fear. And the other side. The scene outside the altar suddenly changed. Xuanhuan opened her eyes and found herself standing on a boulder. She looked around and found that she was surrounded by snow-capped mountains. She could not see the edge at all. It seemed that she had left the Qin dynasty and was in the middle of a vast snow field. Fortunately, I finally escaped. Xuanhuan murmured to herself. She was too impatient and used the teleportation function of the altar before she was ready, causing the endpoint of the teleportation to be uncertain. But although she didn't know where this place was, she was finally safe for the time being. The most important thing for her now is to heal her injuries quickly, restore her cultivation, and go back for revenge as soon as possible. Xuanhuan took out the elixir from her storage ring and drank it. She quickly recovered some of her energy and then began to observe the surrounding scene. Seeing this, Xuanhuan was immediately shocked. Are there any snow mountains around her? It is clearly an endless plain. You can even see some houses in the distance. Xiaozhao, what's going on? Xuanhuan asked with a cautious look in her eyes. Miss, this seems to be another world. Xiaozhao said with a trembling voice. Another world? How is it possible? Have we traveled to another world? Xuanhuan frowned. Although the power of the altar is very powerful, it will never cross planes and bring her and Xiaozhao to another world. Unless an outsider interfered with the power of the altar and forced her and Xiaozhao to other worlds. Xuanhuan's eyes turned cold. If this is the case, who is behind it? Xuanhuan was thinking about it when she suddenly noticed a group of women walking in the distance. No. A group of fairies to be precise. Each woman is dressed in a white gauze dress, with colorful satin tied around her waist, and long flowing sleeves. Her appearance is stunningly beautiful, as if she were a fairy descending to earth, which is stunning. They stepped on the 7-star lotus steps and came slowly, with elegant postures, just like the mysterious women of the 9 heavens, holy and noble. Xuanhuan's pupils narrowed and she stared at the women who were gradually approaching. For some reason, Xuanhuan vaguely felt that the women in front of her were related to Qin Mu. Her heart beat faster and a strange feeling came over her. Soon, these women came to a stop in front of Xuanhuan. Xuanhuan looked at these women. Their facial features are exquisite, their skin is as good as snow, their figures are exquisite and graceful, their every move and smile touches people's hearts, and they are so beautiful that they are beyond ordinary people. Especially the leading woman is extremely beautiful, exuding a noble and holy radiance. She is like an iceberg and a snow lotus. She does not eat fireworks and is intimidating. What's even more surprising is that they all have a petal-shaped golden pattern imprinted on their foreheads, which is lifelike and exudes a mysterious and magnificent luster. Hey, the faces of these two sisters seem a bit unfamiliar. I wonder where the fairies come from. The leading woman was the first to ask. As soon as she spoke, the other women turned their attention. Although these women said nothing, they had already surrounded Xuanhuan, looking curious. Xuanhuan looked back at him without any sign of weakness. At this time, another woman smiled and said softly, "My sister, you don't have to be like this. Since you can enter here, you must be someone His Majesty likes. We will all be sisters in the future." His Majesty. Xuanhuan was stunned, and the figure of a man appeared in her mind. "Yes, sister, stop being wary. My name is Han Sueki. We will definitely help each other in the future. My name is Yun Yan'er." If your sister needs anything in the future, please feel free to contact me. My name is Ching Ching. My sister can call me Ching Ching or Xiao Ching. My name is Lu Ning Xuan. Xuanhuan was a little confused when she heard these beautiful women reveal their names. Xuanhuan. What a mess. A terrifying thought suddenly flashed through her mind. It's over, I'm afraid she fell into a devil's cave. I have been taking fluids for 5 days and it still hasn't healed after taking it. I think it's cheap, and this time the symptoms are much more serious than the previous times. I have been coughing repeatedly, and I also have brain fog symptoms. My thinking seems to be frozen, and my limbs are weak. I am also sleepy, unable to understand what others are saying, and always feel confused. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. At the beginning, I gave the future empress her death. I became stronger because I was stupid. Author, Len Mi and Buletin Leng. Chapter 376. Xuanhuan looked at the women in front of her and thought about some rumors from the outside world. Suddenly she realized something. These fairy-like women are most likely Qin Mu's concubines. And just now, one of the women in red kept saying something about His Majesty. This further verified her idea. So, the world she is in now must be related to Qin Mu. Otherwise, it is impossible to explain everything she just saw and what she is experiencing now. This speculation is simply too terrible. While Xuanhuan was shocked, she couldn't help but feel a little scared. Qin Mu actually has a world? Once this cognition came out, it could never be lingered, and Xuanhuan's heart was pulled up. And this is not the most critical thing. The most critical thing is, how could she be teleported to this world when she was teleporting with the altar? Did Qin Mu intervene? So she appeared in this world? Xuanhuan felt her scalp tingling when she thought of this. Although this guess sounds crazy, it is also the most reasonable guess at present. What a terrible existence she provoked. Xuanhuan did not dare to hesitate. With a slight movement of her mind, she tried to contact the altar and teleport herself out again. Since she could teleport in through the altar, she must be able to teleport out, right? As long as she could leave here, it would be fine. What Xuanhuan did not expect was that even though she had tried hard to mobilize her own spiritual energy to leave, she could not do it at all. This conclusion shocked Xuanhuan. She tried her best to mobilize the spiritual energy in her body, but it still did not work, as if she was bound by some irresistible rules. And the connection between her and the altar seemed to be forcibly interrupted and completely ineffective. What happened? Did Qin Mu do something? Xuanhuan frowned and continued to communicate without giving up, but it still did not work. Xuanhuan's face became more and more gloomy. If it was really Qin Mu who did it, then this man was simply terrifying to the extreme. How many secrets does he know? If she could block the connection between her and the altar, then it was impossible to guess how high the level of this world was. Xuanhuan pursed her lips tightly, her mind was full of thoughts, and her eyes gradually became cold. She tried various methods but to no avail, as if she was trapped in a quagmire. Could it be that, this is a closed little world, and she was trapped here to death? If so, wouldn't it be more painful than death? Xuanhuan couldn't help but shudder. She was absolutely unwilling to be a bird in a cage, let alone a plaything of Qin Mu. So Xuanhuan mobilized her spiritual energy again and tried to leave. Then, damn it! Xuanhuan gritted her teeth and cursed secretly. She still couldn't mobilize the spiritual power in her body. She tried several more times, but the result was the same. No. I absolutely can't be trapped here. Xuanhuan murmured in her heart. Sister, what's wrong with you? The leading woman saw Xuanhuan staring at them in a daze and asked in confusion. Sister, Han Sueki also shouted in confusion. Why is this new sister so silent today? Has His Majesty not asked her to surrender yet? The women's eyes fell on Xuanhuan, with scrutiny in their eyes. Just when Han Sueki was about to ask again, Xuanhuan finally responded. Xuanhuan raised her eyes and slowly scanned the beautiful women standing around. I'm fine. Xuanhuan shook her head. But although she said she was fine, she couldn't suppress her panic. Xuanhuan knew that she needed to find a chance to escape from here as soon as possible. Otherwise, the consequences of being caught by Qin Mu would be unimaginable. Since you are fine, sister, let's go. Han Sueki smiled and said, I'll take you to get familiar with the environment here. Hearing this, Xuanhuan nodded slightly, and then followed Han Sueki away. She couldn't use her spiritual power now, and she couldn't even control the altar. She could only pretend to be obedient and wait for an opportunity to find a way to escape. Xiao Zhao, who was confused, followed quickly. Soon, Xuanhuan was brought to the gate of a palace by Han Sueki. The palace was magnificent and magnificent. When she saw the name of the palace, Xuanhuan's pupils suddenly shrank and she almost broke her teeth. On the palace were 4 big characters written wine pool and meat forest. Well, it was the style of the tyrant. Let's go. Han Sueki said lightly, and walked towards the palace first. Xuanhuan hesitated for a moment, but finally followed with gritted teeth, her footsteps heavy as if filled with lead water. Xuanhuan was led into the hall, which was decorated elegantly and luxuriously, and the air was filled with a strong smell of powder. In the hall, there were all kinds of fairies, beautiful and charming, and graceful fairies sitting on chairs and chatting and laughing. Xuanhuan looked at the women of all shapes and sizes around her, and her eyes twitched fiercely. This group of fairies. She finally understood what the happiness of a tyrant was. At this time, one of the girls in red came forward and said with a smile, a newcomer? We will be a family from now on. Then several more girls gathered around and introduced themselves. Xuanhuan's mouth twitched, and she felt that these girls were simply insane. The tyrant must have given them some kind of magic potion. Hello. A gentle and pleasant voice came from her ear, pulling Xuanhuan out of her thoughts. Turning her head to look at the person, Xuanhuan was slightly stunned. She saw a very delicate girl standing opposite her, with delicate eyebrows and lovely eyes, a faint smile on her face, and she greeted her politely. This person is one of Qin Mu's concubines. Xuanhuan looked at the girl in front of her, but a sense of familiarity flashed through her mind. It seemed as if she had seen her somewhere before, but she couldn't remember where. My name is Shen Yaxi. Shen Yaxi smiled lightly and reached out to hold Xuanhuan's arm. Yes. Xuanhuan stepped back subconsciously, avoiding Shen Yaxi's hand. She was not used to contact with strangers, especially Qin Mu's woman. Shen Yaxi's face was a little stiff, but she quickly recovered as before, with a faint smile on her face. Sister, don't be shy, we will all be a family in the future. Yes. Sister, we will all be sisters in the future, and we should take care of each other, the other 2 girls echoed in unison. Xuanhuan frowned and resisted the urge to run away. Who is a family with you? I am not the concubine of that tyrant, okay. I'll go first, goodbye. Xuanhuan perfunctorily said a few words and walked towards the palace in the distance. However, before she took 2 steps, she suddenly realized who the girl in front of her was. Isn't this the Saint Shen Yaxi of the Yaoguang Holy Land in the Tiankai domain? Aren't she and Qin Mu enemies? Why do they look completely different now? There is something strange, there must be something strange. It's not a good place to stay for long. Xuanhuan took 2 deep breaths, then turned around and walked out the door without making a sound. But as soon as she stepped out of the door, she immediately bumped into a figure, and her nose tip felt sour and painful. Xuanhuan covered her nose and groaned. "Where is Fairy Behu going?" A low voice sounded, and the man's tall and strong body blocked Xuanhuan's way. She raised her head suddenly, and it was Qin Mu who came into her sight. He was wearing a black dragon robe with excellent embroidery, and his handsome and beautiful facial features were as sharp as a knife and an axe. At this moment, his deep and cold black eyes were staring at her, revealing a cold and playful look. "At the beginning, I gave the future empress her death. I became stronger because I was stupid." Author, Len Mian Buletin Leng. Chapter 377. Qin Mu. Xuanhuan stared at Qin Mu angrily, wishing she could pounce on him and tear apart this extremely handsome, but also extremely annoying face. This damn man. If it weren't for him, how could she have fallen to this end? What? Qin Mu raised his eyebrows, his dark eyes narrowed slightly, revealing a hint of amusement. "Where is this place?" Xuanhuan looked at Qin Mu angrily. She had to find out how she got here. Hearing Xuanhuan's words, Qin Mu said lightly, "My bedroom." "What?" Xuanhuan opened her eyes wide. "Is it necessary to make such a fuss?" Qin Mu replied as a matter of course. "You won't forget that you are already my woman, right?" "You are talking nonsense." Xuanhuan was instantly furious, and her whole body became excited, and her almond eyes widened. "When did I become your woman? I warn you, send me out immediately." "Send me out?" Qin Mu sneered, and raised a sarcastic arc on his thin lips. "Please make one thing clear, it's not me who asked you to come in, but you came in by yourself. Since you have the ability to come in by yourself, then go out by yourself." Qin Mu spoke lazily, obviously not wanting to say more nonsense. Xuanhuan was stunned. Yes, she did run in on her own initiative. But this is not what she wanted to come in, but she was framed. Looking at Qin Mu's as if it was a matter of course, Xuanhuan was so angry that she almost went crazy. "This bastard!" Xuanhuan gritted her teeth, trying to suppress the anger in her heart, and shouted at Qin Mujiao, "Qin Mu! You'd better let me go. Otherwise, my sister will not let you go." Qin Mu's eyes lit up, and he looked at Xuanhuan with interest. "Oh, so you have a sister. Who is your sister? What's her name?" Xuanhuan snorted coldly, pretending to be arrogant. "Do you think I will tell you?" "Oh, that's a pity." Qin Mu shook his head regretfully. Xuanhuan asked with a puzzled look, "What a pity? What do you pity?" Qin Mu smiled and said, "It's a pity that your sister will be reunited with you soon." "Nonsense," Xuanhuan sneered, "you don't know how terrible my sister is. She is the real hope of our White Tiger clan. If you dare to do anything to me, my sister will never let you go." When talking about her sister, Xuanhuan's phoenix eyes were filled with unconcealed pride and admiration, and even a hint of despair. Because from childhood to adulthood, her sister was like a mountain, standing firmly in front of her. No matter what she did, as long as her sister was there, she would never get to speak. Her sister was a true genius, the glory and pride of the entire Bai clan. Even though she was the direct blood of the White Tiger family, she would never be half as good as her sister. Because her sister had the blood of the White Tiger ancestor, the purest, noblest and most supreme blood of the White Tiger clan. That's why Xuanhuan wanted to prove herself everywhere, and would try her best to practice, just to become stronger, to make herself more powerful, and then surpass her sister. That's why she came to the great Qin dynasty from afar, willing to lower her status to discuss cooperation with Qin Mu. But she never expected that her plan would fail. Qin Mu was a complete rogue and tyrant, greedy and violent, and completely unrighteous. Even, she might be ruined by Qin Mu and become one of his many concubines. Thinking of this, Xuanhuan felt extremely humiliated, trembling all over, and almost unable to breathe. She regretted it so much at this moment. If she had known earlier, she should not have come to the great Qin dynasty to seek cooperation with Qin Mu. The hope of the White Tiger clan, Qin Mu murmured in a low voice, and suddenly found it very interesting. You have successfully given me new expectations. Expectations? Xuanhuan frowned her delicate eyebrows, and suddenly a bad thought flashed through her mind. What do you want to do? Qin Mu had a faint smile on his lips. You will know later. Clang, there was a sound. Qin Mu tore off his belt and threw it on the ground. Xuanhuan suddenly widened her eyes, full of fear and shock, and quickly shrank back. Qin Mu, I warn you, don't touch me. I am the direct descendant of the White Tiger family. Direct descendant? Qin Mu curled his lips and smiled wickedly. So what? I am the direct descendant. You. Xuanhuan bit her silver teeth secretly, her heart completely chilled. It seems that she is really going to be in trouble today. At this time, Xiaozhao, who had been silent all the time, suddenly stood up and stood between Qin Mu and Xuanhuan, and said to Qin Mu, "Stupid king, if you have the guts, come at me, don't bully my lady." Seeing Xiaozhao blocking in front of her, Xuanhuan's eyes were slightly red, and she couldn't help choking and said, "Xiaozhao, don't be afraid, lady, I will protect you." Xiaozhao looked strong, and looked like a hero who would die bravely. Hearing this, Qin Mu couldn't help but laugh. Protect your young lady? Is that all you can do? Asshole! What kind of man are you if you bully a girl? Kill me first if you dare, Xiaozhao said angrily. Okay, then you die first, and then I will favor your young lady, Qin Mu said with a smile. Hearing this, Xiaozhao was stunned. What? Qin Mu raised his eyebrows, stretched out his hand to pinch Xiaozhao's slender and soft neck, and lifted her up. Don't you like to save the master? Okay, I will give you a death now. If you can survive, then I will consider releasing your lady, Qin Mu said while pinching Xiaozhao's neck hard. Xiaozhao struggled desperately, but she lost her strength. How could she be Qin Mu's opponent? Of course, even if she didn't lose her strength, she would not be the opponent of the question. Soon, Xiaozhao's cheeks turned red, and her pupils gradually became dilated. Looking at this scene, Xuanhuan was so anxious that she burst into tears. Qin Mu, let Xiaozhao go. She is just a maid. Qin Mu turned his head and looked at the girl in front of him with tears on her face, and raised a mocking arc at the corner of his mouth. I just can't stand your arrogant eyes. What about the White Tiger clan? I have not yet failed to get what I want. If you are obedient, I may be able to spare her life. Xuanhuan stared at Qin Mu angrily, with a pair of beautiful eyes containing crystal clear tears. Finally, she slowly closed her eyes and said unwillingly, "Okay, as long as you can spare her life, I can be obedient." Xuanhuan's voice became softer and softer, and finally turned into an ethereal sigh. Looking at Xuanhuan's resolute look, Qin Mu chuckled and then released Xiaozhao's neck. Xiaozhao regained her freedom and collapsed on the ground. Cough, cough, cough. The violent coughing made Xiaozhao regain some consciousness. Xiaozhao covered his throat and breathed deeply. You are so cruel, Xuanhuan bit her lip and cursed. Qin Mu shrugged, as if it was a matter of course. I have always been cruel, especially when it comes to conquering women. Hearing this, Xuanhuan pursed her lips tightly, and an inexplicable sense of humiliation surged in her heart. Why can't we cooperate? Why do you have to take this approach? Xuanhuan asked in confusion. There is obviously a better way for them to cooperate, and they don't have to become enemies at all. Because I want you. Qin Mu's face was frank and unconcealed. Xuanhuan. At the beginning, I gave the future empress her death. I became stronger because I was stupid. Author, Len Mian Bulletin Leng. Chapter 378. This reason made her unable to refute, and she didn't even know whether she should be happy or feel unlucky. Xuanhuan sighed and compromised, "Okay, I promise you, but you have to promise not to hurt me and Xiao Zhao." She is now in this inexplicable world, with no power to use. She has no choice but to reach a consensus with Qin Mu. Qin Mu smiled more and more brilliantly, "I always keep my word." Xuanhuan hesitated for a moment, slowly raised her feet and walked out. "No, it's fine here," Qin Mu said. "What?" Xuanhuan was stunned. Qin Mu pointed to the hall and said, "Isn't it nice here? There are many people and it's lively." Xuanhuan suddenly widened her eyes and looked at Qin Mu in disbelief. What did you just say?" Here Qin Mu pointed again. Xuanhuan couldn't help but clench her fists, and swept her murderous eyes towards Qin Mu fiercely, gritting her teeth and saying, "Qin Mu, you want to humiliate me?" Qin Mu said seriously, "Yes. You." Xuanhuan almost vomited blood. She had never met such a shameless person. "Qin Mu, one day I will kill you." Qin Mu smiled slightly, "I'm waiting." Xuanhuan was angry, but she couldn't do anything to Qin Mu. Finally, Xuanhuan took 2 deep breaths, and her eyes couldn't help but drift to the side, only to see that the surroundings were full of women, Ying and Yan, in various postures. And she was surrounded by stars in the center, as if she was the focus of the whole hall. Xuanhuan's mouth twitched slightly, and she suddenly regretted agreeing to Qin Mu. Let her do this in front of so many people, it's better to let her die. Xuanhuan's face suddenly became extremely stiff, and her heart beat wildly, as if it would jump out at any time. All this fell into Qin Mu's eyes. Qin Mu looked at Xuanhuan with interest. She had delicate features, white skin, and was as beautiful as a fresh and plump peach, waiting to be picked. Qin Mu's mouth curled up with a playful smile, "Do you want to do it yourself, or do you want me to help you?" Xuanhuan's face changed, and she stepped back a few steps alertly. "What are you going to do?" "What do you think?" Qin Mu said with a smile. The next second, he suddenly stood up and approached Xuanhuan with an elegant step. Xuanhuan hurriedly stepped back, leaning against the wall, and barely stabilized her body. "Don't do that." Qin Mu curled his lips, stretched out his hand to pinch Xuanhuan's pointed and tender chin, forcing her to look up and force Xuanhuan to look directly into his eyes. "Don't you want to cooperate? I can guarantee that you will like this way of cooperation." "Like?" Xuanhuan was stunned, and then sneered. "It's a pity that this bastard said it. Which good person would like this method? Anyway, she would never like it in her life." At this moment, Qin Mu suddenly whispered a few words to Xuanhuan's ear, and the hot air from his breath sprayed on her sensitive neck. Xuanhuan was stunned, and then gritted her teeth. "Qin Mu, I advise you not to push your luck." "I also advise you to cooperate," Qin Mu said lightly. "Don't even think about it," Xuanhuan scolded. "In this case." Qin Mu narrowed his narrow black eyes, "Then it's not my fault." The next moment, Qin Mu picked up Xuanhuan by the waist. Xuanhuan widened her eyes in horror and struggled in panic, "Let me go. Let me down." Qin Mu's face was close at hand, and his dark eyes were filled with a sinister and evil cold light, like a devil, full of danger and oppression. Xuanhuan couldn't help but shudder, her heart couldn't stop trembling. What do you want to do?" Qin Mu raised his eyebrows and said, "Guess." The world inside the demon refining pot was peaceful, while the world outside was still in turmoil, with endless battles in various parts of the great Qin dynasty, and chaos. However, this time the turmoil had a role reversal, and it was no longer the great Qin dynasty that was passively beaten, but the rebels and the coalition forces of the Apocalypse Alliance were defeated. Because Qin Mu sent all the saints of the Apocalypse domain that he had subdued, it was simply unstoppable to deal with the rebels and the Apocalypse Domain Alliance. Under the leadership of so many saints, the soldiers of the Great Qin dynasty fought more and more bravely, while the Alliance and the rebels fought less and less, and were defeated. Boom! The images of the saints fell from the sky and smashed through the crowd of rebels. The terrifying pressure swept out in an instant, and corpses were everywhere, screaming continuously. Run! Help! The fleeing rebels dodged in all directions, and a massacre officially began. Ha 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 ha! So good! I finally got my revenge. A bloody and scarred general of the Qin dynasty laughed loudly, raised his sword and chopped down the enemy in front of him. He had never fought such a smooth battle in his life, it was so exciting. Another man was also very excited. Brothers, charge! Kill those sons of bitches for me. Brothers, charge with us. Kill! Don't spare any. The other soldiers were also in high spirits, with smiles on their faces, as if they had been given blood, and they were fighting the enemy crazily. On the other hand, those in the Apocalypse Alliance looked confused. They looked at the scene in front of them in disbelief and couldn't believe it at all. It was clear that the army of the Great Qin dynasty was being chased and hacked by them before, but why did the situation turn around in the blink of an eye and become like this? Get out! Get out! Damn it! Where on earth did Emperor Qin find so many saints? Retreat! The monks of the Apocalypse Alliance fled one after another, dodging awkwardly while shouting curses. I originally thought that this time the Great Qin dynasty would be completely wiped out, but I never expected that it would be like this. It was really unprepared. Kill! Kill those grandsons! The soldiers in the imperial city of Qin had been waiting with all their strength for a long time, and now they were extremely excited when they saw the rebels fleeing in panic. Ha ha! Kill! Kill all those bastards! Soon, the rebel soldiers and the monks of the Apocalypse Alliance were driven out and killed by the Qin soldiers, leaving them dead and injured. Within the Qin, a burst of cheers rang out. Victory! Long live your majesty! Long live! Long live! All the soldiers of Great Qin knelt on the ground and shouted excitedly. They never thought in their lives that they would win so beautifully. The soldiers of Qin cheered and were excited. They had suffered so much these days, and now they were finally proud and proud. However, this war did not stop, but intensified. The war soon spread to the Apocalypse Territory mainland. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. At the beginning, I gave the future empress her death. I became stronger because I was stupid. Author, Len Mian Buletin Leng. Chapter 379. Apocalypse Territory was already in chaos at this time. After Qin Mu placed the 9 saint puppets in the Apocalypse domain, the 9 saint puppets started an indiscriminate attack mode. Although there are many sects of cultivating immortals in Tiankai domain, most of the elite disciples have gone to Great Qin, leaving behind some disciples with low strength who cannot withstand the torment of these cruel saints. The entire Apocalypse Territory was in a mess, batches of monks died, blood stained most of the Apocalypse Territory, and even the peaks of many first-class Holy Land sects were leveled. Because their saint ancestors all went out to conquer the Qin dynasty, there were not many saints left to guard the sect. In addition, they did not expect that someone would take this opportunity to attack their base camp, so they did not set up many defensive measures. In his haste, he was unable to withstand the attacks of the 9 saints' puppets. In just a few days, the entire Apocalypse Territory was almost destroyed and plunged into dire straits. The ordinary monk families and small sects in the Apocalypse Territory have suffered even more, and it can almost be said that their inheritance has been cut off. After all, the cultivation of these 9 saints has reached the saint level. Once they exert their full strength, the power of destroying the heaven and the earth is simply not something that ordinary monks can bear. Many monks in the Apocalypse territory were miserable and had no choice but to fight to the death. However, even so, Apocalypse territory still suffered heavy losses, many sects were razed to the ground, and immortal cultivators suffered numerous casualties. A large number of Holy Land sects were slaughtered overnight and disappeared into the long river of history. For a time, the entire Apocalypse territory was wailing and miserable. The monks from the Apocalypse realm who survived by chance frantically used sound transmission stones to contact the ancestors of saints far away in Great Qin, hoping that they could come back in time to deal with the inexplicable appearance of the 9 saints. However, the sound transmission stone could not contact their saint ancestors at all. In despair, they could only hug each other for warmth and gather their strength together, hoping to find a way to deal with the 9 saints. However, what made them even more desperate was that the 9 saints did not give them any chance to breathe and directly launched a fierce offensive towards their respective targets. Holy places were razed to the ground, mountain protecting formations were shattered one after another, and monks fell into pools of blood one by one. Damn it! In the northern part of the Apocalypse territory, there was a roar from the main hall of the Heavenly Sword Saint sect. At this moment, the main hall was filled with top monks from all the major sects in the Apocalypse domain. They are powerful and they are survivors. Everyone, you have also seen the situation. The 9 great saints who suddenly appeared are so terrifying that we cannot resist them at all. What should we do next? The leader of the Heavenly Sword Saint sect said anxiously. What else can we do? Wait for the ancestor to return. Yes, we can only rely on our ancestors now. But the ancestor can't be contacted, what can we do? Is the sky going to destroy our Apocalypse domain? Alas! There was a lot of noise in the hall. Everyone had a sad look on their face, their eyes were bloodshot, and they looked extremely tired. In this encounter, the losses in the Apocalypse territory were too serious. All the imperial soldiers of the major sects were taken away. If this continues, the entire Apocalypse territory may collapse. Everyone, although we don't know the identities of the 9 saints who suddenly appeared, I'm sure they are related to demons. At this time, a woman in green clothes said, you must have noticed that the way they appear is too strange. They almost always appear quietly, and they kill countless creatures every time they appear. This is not normal. However, as soon as this was said, someone retorted. This time the 9 saints are obviously coming to our Apocalypse territory. The only one who has enmity with the Apocalypse territory now is the Great Qin dynasty. So they must be inseparable from the Great Qin royal family. It must be Qin Mu who invited foreign aid. Hearing these words, the woman in green snorted coldly and said, "Humph, if the Great Qin dynasty really has this kind of power, then how could Qin Mu dare to send it out?" Everyone was talking about it. They didn't know the 9 female saints who attacked Tiankai domain this time. This led many people to suspect that this incident was related to the Qin dynasty. Otherwise, why would these saints attack their mountain gate for no reason? This is completely unjustifiable and without any reason. However, some people do not believe that it is related to the Qin, because in their perception, the Qin royal family does not have such power at all. Since everyone has doubts about the identities of these 9 people, we might as well investigate the origins of these 9 people first. Maybe we can find clues from them. At this time a man stood up and said, "Oh, there's no time." Someone sighed. No matter who sent these 9 female saints, they had no way out. Because now unless a saint ancestor returns to the Apocalypse realm, their safety can be guaranteed. Otherwise, the Apocalypse realm will soon be reduced to ruins and become a huge ghost town without any life. Then what should we do? We must find a way. If the 9 saints continue to wreak havoc, the Apocalypse realm may not be able to be saved. Yes, we must get rid of them as soon as possible. But, What can we do to solve it? Alas, those 9 saints are too terrifying. We really have no way to deal with them. Yes, those saints are too powerful. We can't stop them at all. Even our imperial soldiers were taken away by them. The hall suddenly became a mess. This matter is too difficult. If the ancestor can get back in time, maybe he can deal with the 9 saints. But if there is no saint ancestor sitting in, with their strength, they can't resist the attack of the 9 saints at all, and can only leave it to fate. Hearing the people around talking, the others were also anxious. At the beginning, I gave the future empress her death. I became stronger because I was stupid. Author, Len Mi and Buletin Leng. Chapter 380. Everyone, please be patient. What we need to do most now is to ensure the continuity of the sex inheritance. As for other things, we can put them aside later. Just as the hall was noisy and chaotic, a handsome man in green clothes suddenly stood up and said lightly. His voice was very light, but it sounded like thunder in everyone's ears. In an instant, the whole hall fell silent. Brother is right. We should try our best to protect the sex inheritance. If the inheritance is lost in the hands of these foreign cultivators, we will really be sinners for all eternity. A woman in a purple skirt stood up and said. Her skin was white, her face was covered with a white veil, and her long, shiny, and smooth hair was casually draped on both sides of her shoulders. She was as cold and detached as the 9 heavens mysterious woman, and her whole body was filled with a faint aura. These 2 people were 2 newly promoted saints from the Qingyun Holy Land in the Tiankai domain. They were extraordinary in strength and their cultivation had reached the first level of saints. The 2 of them woke up from their seclusion at the first moment of the great change in the Apocalypse domain, fled all the way, and finally came to the Bingtian Sword Saint sect. I wonder if the 2 Taoist friends have any good ideas. The leader of the Tianjian Saint sect looked at the 2 and asked in a deep voice. The cultivators from other major sects also cast their eyes on the 2. The Apocalypse domain is now in a mess. The only thing we can do now is to stabilize the situation. As long as we work together and protect our respective inheritances, we can rest assured and turn danger into safety when the ancestors return. The purple-skirted woman spoke slowly, with a wise light flashing in her eyes. Yes, the top priority should indeed be to protect the sect inheritance. No matter what, even if we sacrifice ourselves, we must not let the sect inheritance be lost. Another woman in white stood up and said righteously. That's right, my Tianjian sect has stood for thousands of years, and it must not be cut off here. The leader of the Tianjian sect nodded and said in a firm tone. The rest of the people heard this and thought about it seriously. Everyone, I think we can unite first, gather together, and then temporarily avoid the sharp edge and retreat to other areas to seek more powerful help. A white-bearded old man suggested. Well, this suggestion is good. Hearing the old man's proposal, many people immediately agreed. They all knew that with their strength, they were no match for the 9 saints, and staying here would only increase casualties. I agree. I agree too. For a while, everyone in the hall agreed and was willing to retreat to other areas. Okay. Let's do it. Then we can go to Deoxuan territory. They will definitely do justice for us. The leader of the Tianjian Saint sect heard this and nodded solemnly. Deoxuan territory is the most powerful and largest of the 9 human domains. Then, everyone in the hall discussed again and discussed the next retreat plan. Everyone. Everyone. Just then, a panicked shout came from outside the hall. What's going on? The leader of the Tianjian sect frowned slightly, staring at the cultivator with a serious expression. Report to the sect master and the deputy sect master, outside, outside. The disciple trembled, his forehead was full of fine beads of sweat, his face was pale, and he was obviously frightened. What's going on outside? Tell me quickly, the leader of the Tiankai sect shouted angrily. Section sect master, Those 9 demons broke in, the disciple stammered. What? As soon as these words came out, the originally noisy hall suddenly became quiet. Everyone was so scared that they trembled all over, their faces were pale, and they showed extremely terrified expressions. Some people even almost fainted. At this moment, a huge wave of air surged out from the void, as if a prehistoric beast had descended. Boom! The deafening roar resounded in all directions, and the entire Tiankai domain seemed to be shaking. Everyone's face changed drastically, and they immediately turned their heads to look at the direction of the hall entrance, only to see 9 peerless figures stepping in, like exiled immortals. Each beautiful figure had her hands behind her back, and was stunningly beautiful. Their eyes were as bright as stars, their looks were stunning, their figures were graceful, and their temperaments were extraordinary and unbelievable. Especially their skin was white and translucent, flowing with precious light, which attracted everyone's attention. It's over, it's over. Seeing these 9 saints, all the cultivators in the hall were directly frightened, trembling, and kneeling on the ground, looking like they had no desire to live. Not good. The faces of the remaining saints, including the leader of the Tianjian sect and the purple-skirted woman, changed drastically, and they immediately rushed out of the hall without hesitation, wanting to leave here. Swish. However, as soon as they flew out of the hall, they were bounced back by a layer of golden barrier. Then, an even more terrifying pressure enveloped the entire hall, making them breathless. They struggled violently, but they did not move at all and were trapped in the same place. Who are you? Why did you break into my Tianjian sect? Please raise your hands, we are willing to pay any price to atone for our sins. The leader of the Tianjian sect forcibly suppressed the fear in his heart and spoke with a stiff upper lip. Kill your people. The cold voice rang in the hall, full of murderous and cruel colors. Sir! You can't do this. If you kill us, our saint ancestor will definitely fight you to the death after he returns. You will definitely die. An old man shouted, his face flushed with anger and his eyes were red. Puff. As soon as the voice fell, a line of blood appeared on the old man's throat and blood spurted out. The blood mist splashed, a round head soared into the sky, and the blood dyed half of the wall red. One shot to kill. Hiss. Everyone was shocked, gasped, trembled all over, and his face was as pale as paper. This sudden scene made the monks present silent and dared not say a word. Gurgle gurgle. After a long time, everyone finally reacted and swallowed hard. The eyes they looked at the 9 women were full of fear, as if they were looking at the god of death. These fairies who looked like the 9 heavens' mysterious lady were even more ferocious than demons. With just one move, they killed a Saint Realm strongman. You know, a Saint Peak Realm cultivator is enough to sweep across an area, but in front of them, he was as fragile as an egg and had no resistance. This fairy, we are willing to dedicate our property, just hope you can spare our lives, and repay you in the future. After a short silence, the leader of the Tianjian sect took a deep breath, mustered up his courage, and begged carefully. Yes, yes, yes. Yes, yes. We are willing to hand over all our resources, just begging for our lives. This fairy, please let us go. We are willing to surrender. Yes. Fairy, we are willing to surrender. Please spare our lives. I beg the fairy to show some mercy. In an instant, pleadings came one after another in the hall, and everyone begged, with an extremely respectful attitude, and even changed their names. They were scared and terrified. The 9 women in front of them were like 9 killing gods, and they were not able to contend with them at all. The leader of the Heavenly Sword Saint sect carefully observed the 9 saints, with cold sweat on his forehead and a flattering smile on his face.